I believe that we are uniquely gifted to be more for each other. Almost every person I've met in really any corner of the US, I can provide some value, whether it's a personal value and a personal connection or it's a professional connection, and why not help each other? Look, I've been in corporate America for 18 years. I said plenty of people that would rather rush their way to the top and cut throats and do kind of dirty things to get to the top. And I double down on the fact that you can get much further with kindness and respect than you can with all that other stuff.
So very excited to have Mike Weaver on today. Welcome, Mike.
Well, thank you. I don't think you're as excited as I am, I assure you.
And you're here in my backyard this week, which makes it fun. So Mike and I have known each other for quite some time. I mean, what is this, 2 years now that we
It's been at
essentially were
least two.
connected?
It's been at least 2 years. It's been a
And
wild ride, by the way, over 2 years. It's been kind of incredible.
well, I'll have to give you some credit. So as you meet Mike, he becomes your best friend like overnight. So you definitely have a unique gift that way. We
I
have a
don't
great
know. Go ahead.
No, well, maybe we start there. I think,
Sure,
Mike he's a VP of sales for Emser.
that's right.
Something that Emser, which we'll get into later in this conversation, is the diverse amount of product and relationship, that comes along. And that's why you are who you are, Mike. But maybe at the core, I think you have a really unique gift of being able to connect with people, remember, you're very passionate about what you do. You're a great connector. I think that's pretty unique. I don't think every salesperson's that way. I don't think every person in our industry, especially, is that way. Over the years, I'm sure that gift has been refined, and you've worked on that. Core of that? Core of communication, core of that relationship building. Where did that start?
Honestly, I've been with Emser for 18 years, and I started on the operations side of the business, and so much of it was about customer fulfillment and making sure that the customer was happy at the end of the day. And truly, that's what the operations side of the business magnifies. As I transitioned in the latter part of my career to the sales side of the business, I started to think about how people really just enjoy connecting with people, and they really want to work with people that can help solve challenges that they're facing, right? And so I've spent kind of my entire career focused on connecting on one hand and then helping get rid of challenges, right? And that's it. I mean, I also think that people like buying from people, right? You like buying from people that you work with that you enjoy. Um, Personally, it's a sincere delivery for me because I mean it, right? I don't You don't have to coach to be sincere if you feel sincere. You know?
I love that. I think you hit a point here that's really important for everyone listening, is that, and I'm a big proponent on this. I think a lot of us, it's human nature that, we're trying to work with. I'll put in my shoes, right? So I'm trying to work with maybe a certain architect or a certain designer, or possibly a certain client, and it's really easy for me to like be a little anxious and impatient. Where you're coming in like, hey, work with me. Here's what we offer, right? And it's very soliciting in a way.
Sure.
But what's interesting is I found that those people that can really create value, solve challenges, and that's really what you're
Yeah.
speaking to, that relationship's really built by solving challenges and bringing value to the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I am fortunate, and not everybody gets to live in the same kind of environment. But again, I've been with the company so long. Our company prides ourselves on really, and I didn't want to get on the podcast and talk all about Imser Tile, but I'm just going to because I love it so dang much. But like we're kind of built on the opportunity to say yes to the customer, and we put that first, and then our job, really, our whole company worked backwards from there, right? So we figure out where the opportunity is, how we connect, how we become your problem solver, and then we've already committed to fixing the problem, right? And then everything else backs into the fact that we've already said yes. It's important for us to acknowledge that because many companies have a standard way of kind of operating or a standard way of doing business, and I've kind of embraced the alternate to that, right? Which is the customer has a need, and if I can solve that need, then we both become much more important to each other. Our company needs your help providing the resources to solve this need.
And I think you made another point along those lines. I mean, you said people buy from people, right, Mike? And
Yeah,
that's a very interesting comment. The reason being is we're in the industry, right? And from my perspective, again, come from the general contractor, and I know many of the designers I've worked with that, are pretty involved in selections and
sure.
product. And it's very driven, of course, product by itself, right? It has to be, meet certain criteria for the end user and the client and the application. But so much of that relationship is developed and purchased through relationships. And where I'm going is, there's top people that I'm connected with that I'll see them change a company. And it's funny how that can steer the selection process. It can
Sure.
steer product we're putting in, right, wrong, or indifferent. The reality is that people do want to buy from people. And so um, how long did it take you to understand that, yeah, that personal relationship is so valuable because that's really going to help you in your position as VP of sales?
That's a great question, and I'd say probably a little bit challenging to answer. It's probably been about 5 years or so since I really honed in on this channel of business that I think will be a couple hundred million wide the end of 2024. There is a certain channel of customer that doesn't really care exactly where the product comes from, as long as it meets the customer's requirement and they're happy and they like the style, etc. So me as the sales guy who sells a product that the customer doesn't really care where it comes from, then the product sales doesn't drive that customer picking Emser tile. I do, right? And again, as I started calling on the luxury arm of our business and connecting with people like you, I learned that what you really want is to have a good connection with great people that are have similar visions and that are driving the same direction, and that's what I lean into. And when I'm coaching my team, it's a lot less about product sales than it is about making a real, authentic connection. So when the customer has a choice, they choose you.
Yeah, it's a really good perspective. I mean, the reality is, you alluded to it, in the custom world, there are, you know, essentially we can't have limitations, right, to what we're putting in for the
Yeah.
client. And so there are certain products, there's certain applications, there's certain um, installs that require that relationship where I can't just go off the shelf and pick something. I need to have a relationship with someone such as you, Mike, that, hey, Mike, here's what I need. Here's the product I'm trying to source. And I think that's one of the separators for you is that a lot of, I don't want to say box stores, but a lot of manufacturers have their product. They do it well. Here's what you buy. And even until you and I developed this relationship we've had for the last couple of years, it's like, okay, well, Mike's way above that. I mean, I could pick up the phone, call Mike, and you going back to the challenge and problem solving, there's a whole portfolio here that I wasn't even aware of that now, I can work with you on the customization side.
Yeah, so interestingly, I'm working on a house with one of our lead designers, Chloe Garcia, out of Austin, and the home is for a head of state in Virginia that's under NDA, so I can't kind of talk about who it's for, etc. And they wanted to. They're doing porcelain pavers, and in on the East Coast, there's a ton of pool covers and things of that nature, and so you need very specific finishes related to the cope edge and the edging detail, etc. So we've had no less than 5 or 6 calls with the landscape architect, the designer, the homeowner, and the designer of the project, and our fabricator, our architects and designers to align on exactly how the pieces and edge detail need to be finished, so that we give them exactly what they want. I'd like to see, uh, and this isn't a boast, but I'd like to see anyone else in my world do that. It's something very special.
Yeah, and I think you gave me an example. Maybe it's Florida. I'm trying to remember last time I was with you in Texas. There was essentially same thing. You had a detail and it's like a mosaic, and you did this custom application for a pool builder. If I'm not mistaken, maybe it's in Dallas, but
Oh
regardless, remind
yeah,
me of that. Yeah,
you want me to tell you about it?
yeah.
So we met this pool builder. I don't know if I'm supposed to say names on this
It's up
podcast.
to you.
So
I mean, it's
okay,
not an
so
issue.
we have an exclusive and very strong relationship with a pool company called Keithzar Pools. I think they're rated in the top three in the country for pool builders in overall sales volume. Fantastic family that we're very close to. We had a similar kind of meeting and connection, and they wanted a specific mosaic that they had been purchasing from one of our competitors that got discontinued. And it was a natural stone in 4 or 5 colors. We met with them, and this was kind of our barrier of entry, so to speak, right? We met with them, and I thought I did a great job, doing a product review, etc. But they weren't very excited. So, good, bad, or indifferent, I asked them what their challenges were, and they said, our greatest challenge right now is we've got this mosaic that we use on almost every pool, but we can't get it. And I said, if I solve that problem for you, can we be partners from here on out? And honestly, it's 3 years. We do a couple $1 million with them a year, and we deliver this very specific mosaic that they kind of own the rights to, that's how we solved their challenge.
So walk me through that relationship a little bit more in depth. And the reason I say that is because as you think about, you mentioned early on that you're solving challenges, right? And
Yeah.
so With that, I mean, what are some of the challenges that you're dealing with from a manufacturer, from a product delivery side to us builders? I mean, I know that the pandemic, affected a lot from supply chain and communication, and now you're trying to add the custom element, so it's not just essentially off the shelf product. You're dealing with customization. How difficult can that be, just from an infrastructure side, for you to serve, that end client?
Honestly, it can be, that saying, measure twice, cut once. There's probably not a better time to do that than when you're working on a custom project of any sort, right? Especially some of our custom projects, every piece of stone is cut from a specific area of the block, and there's a very specific thickness down to the millimeter, etc. And that can't be wrong, right? We're fortunate because we have a couple of phone calls with their engineers and architects, and a couple with ours, and we outline exactly what it's supposed to be. Then we work directly with the factory. The hardest part is really, if I'm being open, coordinating with getting it delivered. Really, it's coordinating to get it delivered the day and time that that builder or designer expects it, because as things cross the border and come into the country, etc., that can get a little complicated getting through customs. But ultimately, the whole design side and getting the measurements right and the dimensions right, there's nothing more important than that. And I'll tell you that logistics, Brad, during the pandemic, where a lot of our competitors were struggling, and I'm going to give you a cool example. If you go down today to buy, let's say, you silver travertine, you go down to your local stone yard, and you want 16 by 24 travertine, and they say, "I'm sorry, we're out of stock. There's a container on the water." Remember what I said about being the problem solver? So I would meet that customer and they would say, "Hi, I need 16 by 24 silver travertine." I would say, "Great. How much time do you have?" And they'd say, "I don't know. I got it a week." I said, "Fantastic. I'll have it delivered on Friday." And then my whole company, everything that my company does behind the scenes is, if we're out of our core inventory, we will go source the product, inspect it, and deliver it just as if it were our own. Because we made a commitment to that customer. We're entering into a partnership. And you should feel confident that you can rely on us, right? And that's how I want you, the builder, to think when you think of our relationship. You don't have to worry about if Mike's going to get it or not. We said we could get it, and we're going to supply it.
So on the back end side, when you're making those commitments, that's putting you on the line, Mike. And I'll say, just from my side, you deliver every time, which is not common. That's not the case with all of our suppliers and manufacturers. You are working with other countries. You are sourcing product. There are logistics, and freight and
Yeah.
customs, as you get through. Um, any examples where that's held you up? How have you worked around that? How have you dealt with that, especially these last couple of years?
Yeah. Um, First of all, our vice president of supply chain, and I think he might be chief supply chain officer now. His name is Mark. A wonderful guy. He's been with our company over 10 years. He's got some of the best relationships with the ports and carriers from all around the world. Our container rates, we're in the top 100 shippers in the United States, and that's up there with Home Depot and all the other big box, et cetera, because our product's so heavy. So we don't really run the challenge of, can it get on a container and come over to the country? What we struggle with, what, to be honest, what people struggle with is, once it hits the port, there is no real rule, right? It's not a U.S. government port. It's not a Brazilian port. It is a port, and they move at the pace that the port moves. And oftentimes, the hardest part of dialoguing is, how do I make my product a priority so that I get it to deliver to the job site on time? And that's really the only struggle. And I've got plenty of examples where that maybe aren't appropriate for this podcast, but to tell you things we've had to do to make our product a priority. Uh, uh, but at the end of the day, that's if there's a quagmire somewhere, that's where it is.
Now, getting back to the relationship side, you say people buy people. And one thing so to be transparent, you and I met through David and Angela, down in
Yeah,
San
of course.
Antonio, which, there's a great story there about how you met them. It's funny how you have these connection points, but essentially you're involved with the coalition summit we do. And again, when I look at go-getters, we'll just call it, fortunately on this podcast, I'm able to interview a lot of entrepreneurs that have been very
Sure.
successful in their fields for a lot of reasons. A lot of it's personality, drive, competition, whatever it may be. And with you, Mike, I've seen that, yes, there's a relationship side, a non-soliciting, but one thing that you're adamant about is you're visiting these builders all across the country in their location. And where this had impact, you came to my office and met with my team. And this is where a lot of us have an understanding of our suppliers, their limitations, what they supply. and mind blowing, right? That Mike comes in and says, look, here's what you probably have perceived that we're supplying, but here's the reality. And, opening up this network. So again, there's time commitments to do this to travel, but for you to be committed to go visit personally all 30, 40 attendees each conference, there's a time there, but it shows your investment and your dedication to the craft and to the position you have.
First of all, over the last 2 years, there is not and has not been a better group of. This isn't a plug for the. I'm just going to keep it real. There has not been a better connection point than the coalition for me into this kind of this area of our business. Honestly, it's unique to get a group of people all in the same place that all really want to do the same thing, be a part of each other's success and growth. For one, I find a lot of value in that. And I would double down on the fact that, look, at the end of the day, if you say that you want to partner with me, then I want to partner with you. And if I have to hop on a plane and fly to Boston to meet you in Boston to get you to look at a project or to walk through a project and talk about what our opportunity is going to look like, I'll do it. Just like I did when I flew to meet you and your team in the Phoenix area. You know.
Yeah, and it's pretty unique. I mean, as you mentioned, what I do love about these conferences, and truth be told, I was fortunate to speak at Design Camp, recently. And what's neat about these conferences, whether it's interior design, whether it's what we're doing in the construction side, um, there's so many pitfalls we have as business owners, and there's just not really a roadmap. It's not like
Yeah.
in college it's going to teach you how to run your business effectively. And
Sure.
so ideally you're working in a peer group of some sort. It's kind of hard to do that locally because you're in a competitive market. And so when you can go on a national level, and when you're people that are willing to invest in their career, that they're willing to invest in their business and in themselves, like, are always going to, that investment will always pay long-term dividends. Right. And so you have people that are like-minded, and then you mix in, a Mike with Emser, and sky's the limit.
I appreciate every time I get to meet with this group. Honestly, it's a fun group of people that connect. And again, it's kind of endearing to see a group of such successful individuals still wanting to get better and learn from those who have kind of maybe done it already or have made some of the mistakes that they'll make. It's neat to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And one thing it's funny because we're part of CBUSA, which is, Builder Trend owns CBUSA. It's a national buying group. And I always laugh. I know I give you a hard time because Mike will have a tendency. I've heard you public speak many times, and I feel like your icebreaker. You go and saying I'm shy, so bear with me.
I don't know why
But
everybody makes fun of that. So I have this odd like I think it's maybe just anticipation or kind of build up that like what if I say isn't funny or what if you don't want to hear it or what if the groups are jerks and again I enjoy the coalition because they're all there for that reason, right? And no matter where I'm doing a public engagement, I really want them to know that I am anxious like everyone else to speak in front of groups of this size, whether it be a couple hundred or or a few thousand. But ultimately, we're here for each other. It's another reason I start every speaking engagement with a collage of my family, right?
yeah.
Because I really do believe that if we're going to be partners, I'm going to know you and you're going to know me, and we will pick each other in the end. You know.
So maybe walk me through that. I mean, you public speak a lot. I think it's pretty rare. I think many of us, it's just human nature to get anxiety. Those pits in your stomach, and you don't want to choke up as you're up on stage. Um, any secrets to how you've reformed that public speaking skill set, over time?
Yeah, I remember. I tried to remember that there are very few people that are going to get on stage that can actually deliver what I can deliver. Not the message, and it's maybe not even me personally. It's not something I'm personally delivering, but what I'm representing. Very few people can do. Very few companies can do, etc. And to be honest, that gives me a lot of strength and confidence in delivering a message, no matter the group. So once I get a chance to meet with you and you actually understand, what I'm about and what we do, what partnership means to us and means to me personally, you'd be a fool not to want to work with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you would be, and it's just that personality. Um, Walk us through. You've increased in your career, all throughout the years, on different positions. For people that listen that may be in a corporate position or trying to climb the corporate ladder, maybe they're just an entrepreneur looking to
Sure.
grow themselves and their skill set. How's your career evolved over the years?
Good question. In 18 years, I've held 9 roles with the company and lived in 6 states. That's kind of been the evolution. I started as a warehouse lead slash kind of operations manager in our Reno, Nevada branch. And then I subsequently went from local operations manager to an outside sales rep to a branch manager to a regional operations manager, the director of operations for the company, and then the regional sales manager, regional manager, or in for some markets or for some companies, regional manager would also be considered regional vice president, where you have all autonomy and responsibility for a set number of branches, to now vice president of just about a third of the company's overall sales volume.
Wow, so a third of the volume. Um, what when you look at the metric side from your aspect, how difficult can it be to, because I'm sure there's goals, there's internal goals that you
Sure.
have, there's volume, there's that's part of company growth. Um, how have these relationships, whether it be the coalition summit, whether it be CBUSA, how have these doors opened up different channels for you to grow, the brand itself at Emser?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to tell you that again, something I really appreciate, and the coalition is a great example, but there are a few others that you alluded to, be it the CBUSA, Power 30 events and things of that nature, that really do touch every area of the country. Making the connection at an event like that, and then being able to connect my local team with them, and then the connections and people that they know in their market that they're connected to from other events. Honestly, it's like a spider web of wonderful excitement. Honestly, last week I had a call with Morgan, who connected me with from Construction to Style, who connected me with JCath, and we had a call with them and my team, and it's pretty incredible to make the way the connections kind of spawn. Honestly, I attribute lots of millions to my start of my relationship with the coalition to today. So I'm very, very happy with that. And it gives, honestly, the more we learn about another thing I really appreciate about the coalition is the education. The more I learn of what's important to builders of your scale and style, I can coach my team on how to play to those strengths. Those are the things that are important to you, and if they understand them, it gives them a better chance at connecting locally. So we put a lot of focus on that. And I typically, if I'm attending a coalition, I'll stay through all of the classes and courses, just like I was a builder attending, and I get to hear the pain points and the challenges, etc. And it helps us figure out what problems we have to solve in the industry. You know?
I love that you brought that up because going back to the design camp that I was at, recently, I was able to sit in, due to my travel schedule and, our Builder 20 that we had, I wasn't able to stay the entire conference. But what was interesting is I was able to sit in and, I don't do design. I'm open. I don't. And I was asked actually when I was at the conference, they said, Brad, do you have any interest of starting a design firm, right? Doing design build. And I said, I really
Sure.
don't for a lot of reasons I pointed out. But what's interesting is, um, I've tried, I think as a company, we've tried to really understand what are the pain points of our
Yeah.
designers, of our architects, of everyone that's involved in this process to really create this incredible customer experience. And just to your point, Mike, the more information and education we have, the more knowledge, right? And application. One, there's things they said, I'm all, this is actually really smart. I can kind of interpret
Sure.
and bring this back and apply it to my business. And second, it really helps me understand um, state of mind, right? Exactly where
Sure.
they're at running
Sure.
their business, so that now I can apply that. And I thought that's interesting because I will say, when you've come to the summit, you're in these meetings, listen to us to speak about stuff that's probably no relation to you, but at the same time, there is relation.
Well, especially now because I've attended a few of them. Now I actually understand what you're talking about. I have to admit, the first one I had no clue. I just smiled and nodded, and now at least I know what you're talking about. I'll tell you, I you hit on something in relation to the how much more important you can become to the designers the better you understand what their challenges and pain points are. And I'll tell you that there's something that I say to most customers that I meet with, no matter what channel of business, whether they're a developer or a custom home builder, etc. I will typically say, the better you educate me on what's important, the better I can serve you. And that's really a reality, right? I don't just want to understand what kind of product you use. I want to know when you use it, at what times, how your team likes delivery, how many people you have on your staff, how many people make design selection choices, how many people are in the field. the better we understand the business in totality, the better I can build a package that supports your growth. You want to talk about the way to success? If I know what's important to Brad and his company, then Brad will only pick me.
Yeah. Yep.
Period. Period.
Yeah. I think that's really valuable. And really to your point, Mike, that you've made is, if you're working in production or semi-custom, yeah, you're going to work with the purchasing agent. You're going to work with the design center, right? For these big builders, and that's fine. But the minute you get into custom, it makes it a little challenging because to your point, you're now working with the design team. So the end user may not have as much
Dude,
of a voice as the designer.
dude, it's the hardest gig I've ever had in my whole life, which is why it's a nut I wanted to crack so bad, right? A Honestly, I applaud any of the builders or remodelers, et cetera, that have attended the coalition or that are part of CBUSA and that group of people going onward and upward. um, it's a very unique experience to understand the web that gets to that home being built, and what's important to you, Brad, is different maybe than what's important to that designer. That's different than maybe what's important to that architect. But understanding how that web works and how your web specifically works also helps us land more of your business, right? I tell anyone who does this job, the better you understand that individual's business and how it runs and works, the easier you'll find success with that customer.
So over your entire career, but it's specifically the last few years, you've worked individually with a lot of designers and builders. Answering both parts of this to both design and build, what do you feel is a separator that separates good designers? What is a separator that separates good builders? From a manufacturer perspective.
Now, that's a hard question. Well, okay, so if there's any builders that okay, let me back up. So, what makes a good designer? I love designers that express their design creativity, but do it with reality in mind. Right? Um, there's one thing to say something looks really nice, and it may, right? But installing that something it can go smoothly or it can be a considerable challenge. And I think
Or
what
the
makes
client has to live in it, right? Or
that,
the
that's
client has to live in it.
that's exactly right. So some of
It's
the
not a
best
photo shoot.
yeah, some of the best designers to me really understand the functionality of a product
Mhm.
and design with at least with that functionality in mind. It's a community I revere very much, but those that I'm connected with the most typically tend to understand the functionality a lot when going into the design, so they make sure that that homeowner's happy for years and years to come. You know, that's the designer. On the builder side, I guess all I'll say on the builder side is I appreciate when a really quality product is built, and you can tell when people cut corners and when they don't. And typically,
Mhm.
in my discovery phase, when I'm connecting with that builder and his project man or her project managers and supers, etc., I can tell if it's the kind of group that's going to kind of cut corners and try to get the job finished, or if they're going to take their time to make sure that they do it right. And that's typically where we sometimes as suppliers make a choice, right? Because if that builder's going to not be as meticulous as maybe they should be on this project, I've got some things to worry about when I'm building a custom product for them that maybe that product doesn't end up working in on that application, and now we've got to start from ground zero, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, really, as builders, we do have to be the curators of the designer's design, execute it, and then build at a high level. Which,
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, it's becoming more challenging with the labor pool and trade base,
sure.
and a lot. I know as an industry, we're trying to make advocate for the trades, and that there's a lot of opportunity, especially for a lot of our young professionals coming in that they can forego college and be successful in the
I,
trades.
Man, I could tell you when I was a kid, I grew up in Salem, Oregon, and this part of Oregon is it's very pretty, it's very green, but it's also not affluent at all. There's absolutely no industry. It's well below the poverty line. They're really the only industry in Salem, Oregon. It's the state capital. Is the government, right? So if you don't work for the government, you don't have success. There's no new construction, no remodels. There's no, I never lived in a house that got a remodel or that had, for that matter, even had tile, let alone got new
Yeah,
tile. And
yeah.
and I would tell anyone that interested in educating America's youth, especially those that are at poverty line or below, how much of a business could be built in the construction industry, whether it be an installer or a GC or what have you. People, this business, you can, make quite a life in this business, and if you could paint a picture, if there was someone that went into a middle school and could paint a picture that here are two paths, right? Here's the path that you would take as an apprentice as you learn to set tile and what your income level would be. And here's another path that's maybe the wrong path. And those two pictures being painted, I can tell you that America's youth would quite likely pick the path of that trade professional. We just didn't know it existed. Again, I'm a product of one of those that really had no idea. And we never had a painter come paint the house. We
Right.
never even knew that was a thing.
And in fairness, I grew up in a very, blue collar
Sure.
area. Not in Arizona. And same thing, I didn't deal with homes that were remodeled. I can't think of my house or any friend's house I ever went to that was going through a remodel. I did have some peers that they had bathrooms unfinished the entire time they lived there. So, kind of a
I,
different
I think my
operation.
I think my aunt still has one today.
Yeah. um, but I think to the point of that, this is probably the next venture, right? That's bigger than this conversation, but um, there definitely is some associates of mine, and that where we're looking at a plan where we can go speak at the high school level and
Yeah,
educate. Like I'm sure you would, Mike. I mean, you'd be phenomenal for this to let these students know the opportunities and salary ranges and just the benefits of, hey, here's what's out there. There's a lot of opportunity in building and design in the
yeah.
future.
I have my neighbor where I live in Texas. I have a doctor that's a neighbor to my left, and a couple of attorneys on the street and things of that nature. And I go to these group events, and they ask me what I do for a living, and I tell them that I sell tile. And everybody, I think there's a little chuckle, and
Yeah, like a
reality is
stigma.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, look, this I tell you, the kind of life you can create in the construction industry is, dude, it's honestly the sky's the limit.
Isn't that funny? I can only imagine those conversations. Yeah, I sell tile, and they're kind of looking at you like, "Wait, what?"
I, of course, say it in a very jovial,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
inconspicuous way. Oh yeah, I sell tile. Probably if you that yeah, what I don't tell them is there's an 80% chance that if you bought a house in the United States in the last 10 years, it's probably mine.
yeah. In fairness, you're probably saying it in a you're saying it in a self-deprecating way, but the reality is, little do they know who they're speaking with, right? So
That's
I want to come
funny.
back to the connections, and here's why. Here's kind of the point of the story is that I look here. One of my preferred vendors that I'm using all the time. um, the relationship didn't start off good, right? They came in. This is many years ago. I just started AFT. I mean, this is 10 years ago. So I'm out in the field running the project.
Yeah,
We had a lot of issues with this install and the end application. Um, but I have to give them credit because the owner of this company was so communicative, was always responsive, just like Brad, I'll make it up.
sure.
We'll figure it out. We'll find a solution. And you don't always get that in the trades, right? A lot of them are like, well, it's
Yeah,
too bad. This is how it is. We just move on, whatever. And as small as this job was for that business owner, his commitment, right, to his brand, commitment to communication, commitment to
sure.
me, even though I had at this time, trust me, no one knew who AFT was, 10 years ago. I can assure you that. Um, and this is probably now going back to the people buy from people. I'd buy from this guy no matter where he went. I mean, he's just that phenomenal of a person. And what's interesting, the reason I want to bring up David and Angela is because here's a connection. I want you to tell a story because you make a connection to them with a little mix up at the valet parking. And but again, you turn that into speak about the relationship you have with them now, and then that's how you and I got connected, and now you know it
Hey,
continues to evolve.
funny story. Right before this, I was on the phone with Angela. I mean, like, I hung up because I had to get started. I think
Yeah,
we started at 10, and I hung up with her at 9:58.
yeah,
Okay, so let me give you the story. It is a good story. So, I was in Dallas at a friend out of Spokane, Washington, that was staying at a hotel that was doing a lighting show. Right, and a friend also happens to be a customer of ours. And so I went and had dinner with this friend, and great dinner, etc. Well, I parked my car at the valet on my way out of the restaurant. They bring up my car, and I get in, and Then I look around the window, and someone in the driver's side window, someone's trying to get in the car, and she actually opens the door and starts to sit down. And I'm like, "Excuse me, this is my car. What can I do? Can I help you? This is not your car. This is my car." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I just bought the car. It's brand new. It still had temporary plates. I know for sure it's mine, you know." Anyway, she's emphatic that it's her car. So, long story short, she goes, takes another look around the back, and realizes that the model is very slightly different, but same color wheels, same, everything exactly, the windows, the exterior paint, etc. So after we find out that this is my car, I get out and start talking to this couple, and this couple happened to be David and Angela from Pinsac Custom Homes. And so I pull over to the right. We're outside of the hotel, by the way. And I said, "Okay, so tell me, what do you guys do?" And I always want to know what you do for a living. I want to
Mhm.
see if there's some correlation to what I do for a living, if I'm being
Right,
open.
right.
So I said, "Well, tell me, what do you do for a living?" He said, "Oh, we build houses in San Antonio." I said, "Oh, that's cool. Where do you buy your tile?" And I'm sure they were thinking, "Why is this guy that drives this car want to know about my tile purchases?" And she said, "Well, typically I buy them from Emser Tile." And I thought for a minute, there's no way she knows. There's nothing that she could have seen in my car or on my, in my outfit, etc., that said Emser Tile, right? And I said, "No way." She said, "Oh yeah, that's probably, you know, I don't know, half at least of our jobs we do with Emser Tile." And I said, "Prove it. Who's your sales rep?" And they said, "Well, my sales rep is Annette." And so this was probably 10:30 at night. So at 10:30 at night, we FaceTime our sales rep in San Antonio, and she picks up. And so we have this great laugh and conversation. Fast forward, they're an exclusive custom home builder of ours that we work with exclusively. We end up sourcing, about a third of their product to make sure that we give them everything they want. Well, one night in an event, and this is, well, I'm going to fast forward to yours and my first phone call. I was meeting with David and Angela actually at their house. We had just finished reviewing a project, and like, "Oh my gosh, Michael!" And this is the first time I've ever kind of had, like, we're building a friendship, right? Dave, Angela, and
Mhm.
I. And they said, "Oh my gosh, you've got to come to the coalition." And I'm like, "Well, what's the coalition?" And she starts to tell me about this amazing guy named Brad, and the Nick and Morgan, this marketing guru. And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm sure I'd love to know more about it." And they said, "Well, I think the sponsorship costs X." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm not sure my company's going to pay for that kind of sponsorship." But anyway, I look, and it's like, and then Angela says, "Well, let's just call him." And again, I think it was pretty late, Brad, and you picked up on the first or second ring, and it was, and she's like, "Hey, this is Mike. Meet Mike. I want him to come to the next coalition." And that's kind of where it all started, right? I think that night I also learned that a competitor was sponsoring the coalition, and I made a vow that not only would I sponsor the coalition, but I will never allow another tile company to sponsor that's not Emser Tile. And I've held my word. I've held my word since then. Anyway, and that's it. And I think the rest is history. Did I miss something?
Yeah. No, you got it on. The reason I bring it up, I think that anyone listening, there's a long game to this. I think we can be impatient, and for you, you have this easy. I mean, anyone can relate to this mishap. You have two cars that almost look like, so valet comes up. Yeah, you're going to assume it's your car. You're not going to look at
Sure.
every detail. So you hop in, and instead of you taking the tactic like being rude or condescending or like get out of my new car, it's interesting. It's kind of there's a lesson there that you immediately are going to. What do you do for a living? And you're building this you're building a relationship of trust, right? That BRT. Um, and what's interesting, anyone that travels, you're on an airplane, you're talking to someone, maybe you're a little bit more kindful than you normally be, having a stressful day. For me, I like golf, and so I'll be on the golf course, and I love when I'm out of town playing with a new foursome
Sure.
because there's three people I've never met, and that's always a conversation. What do you do for work? You're out here golfing. Like, what? Remember at the country club? Like, what do you do for an occupation? But it's funny how those connections come back, and
Yeah.
how just there's important sales tactic and business owner and entrepreneurship that here you are in the valet, and this has turned into a really important, valuable relationship for you and Emser as a whole, over the last few years.
Yeah. I can't say that I have always been so communicative traveling on planes, or honestly, that meeting with Angela and David, it turned a little bit of a switch, right? Even mentally, I've always met people professionally. It's kind of my job, right? And I tend to learn a lot in a short amount of time and build quick relationships. Really more because I really do value building that partnership, but still it does. But I think ever since that kind of meet cute with Angela and David, I meet absolutely everyone, absolutely everywhere. If they'll talk to me, I'm going to talk to them, and I'm the shy one. I'm the one that would probably
I'm the shy
say
one.
I don't actually want to talk to anyone, but I'm going to do it anyway. Honestly, I think I started just by forcing myself to talk, and then the rest is history. Now you can't get me to shut up.
Well, there's just a point there because it's one thing to have the business head on when you're at an industry event. You're at IBS or KBiz, you're
Sure.
at the Coalition Summit. You're at some local networking event with other builders, architects, and designers. But it's different in everyday life, and to be able to not shut that off. I mean, there's definitely an attribute of very successful people that I've seen. Heck, they'll be in the Uber just talking to the Uber driver. You never know these points of connection.
I've got another quick story for you about meeting people. I was in one of our locations in Houston, and there's a wonderful installer in Houston. His name is Alex, and I'm working in the showroom with the branch, and Alex comes up to the counter to buy a couple of bags of grout. And I asked Alex what he does, and he says, "Well, I'm a tile installer." I said, "Great. Well, man, who do you install for?" At the end of the day, everyone installing tile is installing it on something, right? And so I want to know, what are you installing it for? What do you? And he turns out that he works for one of the largest custom home builders in all of Houston. And I asked him, I said, "Look, can I ask you a favor?" First time I ever met Alex, I said, "I think you're probably a nice guy. I'm probably a nice guy. Let's do each other a favor. How about you introduce me to this builder?" And I'll save the name, but how about you introduce me to this builder and let's see if we can make a connection? And he says, "Oh man, I don't. I try not to put my name on anything. It's a super sensitive relationship, etc." And I said, "You give me one shot, and I bet it'll be great for both of us." And he said, "Okay." So he sent this text message, a joint text to me and the owner of this. Honestly, I've been chasing this target for like 5 years, and he sent an introductory text between the two of us, and I was meeting with that builder the following week. And I think little things like that help describe the importance of connecting with everyone that you meet, and what you can do for someone. You may not know that that person you're connecting with needs something, but they may. Right? You may not know that there's a piece of their life or their profession, etc., that needs some additional fulfillment, and you can be a part of that fulfillment. I'd like to be part of the fulfillment.
Yeah, and there's definitely an opportunistic side of this, right? From as we look at careers and entrepreneurship and building relationships, I think there's a human element, right, that probably
Sure.
doesn't get spoken about enough. And um, not to sidetrack it too much, but essentially, there's people that may be having a tough time in life, and people that'll leave letters about, hey, I don't, feel that there's any value to me, at this in this earth, and a
Sure.
lot of them are like, hey, I'm going to make a life altering decision right now, and if one person will smile at me, right, how would that change my day? I think there's just so much, in the day to day passing and stress that there's little touch points there that are much bigger than just the sales operation itself.
I believe that we are uniquely gifted to be more for each other. That is something that's very special, both for me personally and professionally. Um, I think that you know almost every person I've met in really any corner of the U.S., I can provide some value, right? And whether it's a personal value and a personal connection, or it's a professional connection, and whatever, there is value that we can provide each other, and why not help each other, right? I've seen plenty of people in this industry, and look, I've been in corporate America for 18 years. I said plenty of people that would rather rush their way to the top and cut throats and do kind of dirty things to get to the top. And I double down on the fact that you can get much further with kindness and respect than you can with all that other stuff. Uh, Other things may move a little faster, but what we're talking about today is much more sustainable. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. So tell me about Emser, because I think this is probably eye opening for everyone there. That uh, I'll be open. I'm like, hey, from exterior, facade product to fireplaces to counter. I mean, you name it. Walk us through some of the portfolio and as far as Emser is concerned.
Well, let's start with the platform. So we are the second largest privately held flooring company in the country. probably the third largest in the world, largest importer of natural stone in the country, and we've got a core 5,000 SKUs of product. I had a customer once ask me what our company's or what our product identity was, and I said honestly, we don't really have one. That's intentional. We have everything from a very entry level remodel or entry level home to product that $100 a square foot and everything there in between. If you can't find something in our core line of product, um, we import from every country that manufactures product from around the world, right, around the globe. From a product portfolio perspective, outside of our core line of product, we do interior. You pick the shape, size, and finish. Exterior, you pick the shape, size, and finish. Pool copings, pavers, ledger panels, stack stone, exterior cladding, all kinds of finishes: leathered, hammered, scraped, striationed, honed. There isn't really a limit. I have this. There's kind of this magic phrase that I use that is like, if you dream it, we can create it. Right? If you want to have the only pool in town that's got a 12-inch, or excuse me, a 16-inch by 96-inch coping, I can provide it. That doesn't even exist in the world today, but I can provide it. Another thing that by the way, Keith is ours, we import just for them, is a 24 by 96-inch 5 cm travertine slab because they don't like a lot of seams on their jobs.
Yeah.
Really, we take every project and look at how do we maximize the opportunity with this customer? How do we maximize the opportunity with this job? And if it can be sourced, typically we can source it. That's kind of the answer. And if but
It-
I'd even add, if we don't source it, we may start sourcing it just so we can support your business.
well, there's a value add in there when I look about as you mentioned, just the desire of no seams, right? Because a lot of us are working with manufacturers, and the end user, of course, everyone wants to be bigger, bigger openings, right? They want
Sure.
bigger tile, bigger countertops. But what's unique is you have probably your core product, but you're willing to step outside of that to say, hey, we can do custom sizes, we can do, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
custom design to meet the needs of your project.
So I met with a design firm in Colorado last. It's probably been a couple of weeks now, and wonderful, just an incredible group of ladies in this design firm, and we're talking about our partnership and the marbles that they want to start using on their jobs. And one of the owner and lead designer said, "Look, I think I want to add a piece of furniture to our each of our collections. They have 5 color collections. I'd like to add this very specific C-channel table carved out of marble. Can you provide it?" So we got on the phone with our engineers in Mexico, and we created a kind of a mock and schematic of this C table that's now going to become part of her core product packages. What other tile company does that? Carved out of marble and sable brown leathered marble. It doesn't exist in today's world. Um, the options are pretty unlimited. Another kind of funny note is the first custom fireplace that we ever did, that we manufactured and fabricated in Mexico. We had carved from a piece of desert cream limestone. The customer sent us a picture on Instagram and said, "Man, I really like this fireplace, but I want it. Can you do real stone and not this cast stuff that's just one solid color?" And I said, "Well, let me send it to the factory." We sent it to the factory. In like 2 days, we got it back in AutoCAD with a couple of questions. We finished the AutoCAD discussion, and we delivered a custom carved fireplace, a huge fireplace, custom carved, under 12 weeks. Again, just unheard of.
It's incredible. And just as a business mindset, I mean, does your team enjoy this aspect? Because one thing I know you'll do is you could take inspiration, from our designers. You can take, Pinterest boards, and you can essentially help the designer work through that design
It's
process
this
of now customizing it.
another great point. So we will often have a customer, say designers included, that will say, "Look, here's the homeowner's inspiration. Put product to it." And if we talk to many designers today that will say, "Look, I spend half of my time. I already have the inspiration. I spend the other half of the time trying to source where to get the material from." Well, we like to take that challenge off of the hands of the designers. And to say we enjoy it might be a little bit of a stretch because it's not an easy process. But
Right.
ultimately, it leads to considerable sales volume, and you do become a pretty extreme resource. What would it be like if you were a designer that spent 30% of your time trying to source product and you never had to do that again? What
Yeah,
could you be
and
doing with that time?
yeah, and that's the value add again, right? It's not easy. It's not, for us as custom builders or custom designers. I mean, these are homes that have never been built. There's a custom element, but essentially that's how you're servicing that clientele that's expecting that.
Sure. Yeah, it is an aspect of the business that we find very necessary. And honestly, you don't get many in our world of manufacturers. Exclusive really isn't a thing. And so, really, the only way we're able to land so many exclusives is the time we spend on our product sourcing, right? Outside of having great salespeople that connect really well with the builders and design community, you also have to be able to source product that gives them everyone the design creativity to give that homeowner the home of their dreams. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. So what keeps you up at night, Mike?
so my daughter's 10, and it's an interesting age because she's starting to like her own style of music, and she's starting to like fashion, and so really the only thing that keeps me up at night is this 10-year-old kid and what music she's listening to. Last night, a funny story, I walked up to her room to kiss her goodnight, and she had, and we don't let her have too many electronics in our room. She has an Alexa that, or a Alexa deal that is her alarm clock. And she had headphones plugged into the alarm clock, listening to music as she was going to sleep. And and I'm anxious about some of the things that she'll like or that may get into that I'm going to have to navigate. And I've only got one, and she's 10 and really pretty. So that's the only thing that keeps me up at night.
That's good. I mean, as long as it's just your 10-year-old and it's not work, that means you've created a good work-life balance there,
Like
so.
I've I really just I try to do the right thing, right? You make a connection with really good people, and you try to do the right thing and work as absolutely as hard as you can. I try not to let that keep me up.
Yeah, that's really good. Um, with plans for growth, what do you see up and coming for Emser that we may not be aware of?
Well, if you've ever seen a map, I won't bore you, but if you look at a map on our website, you'll see there's E's on this map, and there's little asterisks. And asterisks typically represent our locations, and the E's represent our distribution center. I think what you're going to find is a considerable amount of expansion in the Northeast. We're already pretty dominant in the West Coast and throughout the central United States. Our furthest east location is New Jersey, but I think what you're going to see is a considerable number of asterisks hit the East Coast as we spend a lot more time focused on kind of urban contemporary markets. There's going to be a whole addition of urban and contemporary products as part of our enhanced line, which is a super custom line of product we offer, and that'll be a lot of our growth for the company's future. I can tell you also, I don't think that we're scratching the surface on the luxury home builder side. We've Since the first of the year, we've opened a little over 300 custom builder accounts across the country, and there are thousands still to go.
Hmm. It's amazing, and there's no one better to go get it than you, Mike. Some of the best advice you've been given in your career.
So when I was promoted to vice president, the president of our company's name is Carl Delia. He's a wonderful, wonderful individual, super, super smart. And to say I'm a unique person is maybe an understatement. And I tend to enjoy having a good time. And although I understand the need for being motivating, but also having a very strategic execution plan and being able to do both simultaneously, which is important professionally. When Carl flew to Dallas to offer me the promotion to vice president, Carl said, "But do me one favor, don't ever change who you are." And I thought that was an interesting comment because I think as you're deliberating taking a new role, or you're kind of climbing the socioeconomic not economic ladder, people tend to think they have to behave a certain way to fit in to a certain group of people. and that can be risky because
Hmm.
a lot of what got you there is who you are today, not maybe who you think you should be, right? And Carl's message really was you don't have to change and be someone else to do that job. You can be just who you are. And that, man, I think about that message every single day. And when I have dialogues like this, so I honestly, I think the world of you, Brad, and being able to have this kind of conversation and still be the guy that I was when we first met, and the guy that I was when I was promoted to vice president, and the same guy that I was when I was the operations manager in Reno, Nevada. It's pretty neat.
I do love that. I think for whatever reason, and this isn't an attack on anybody. I think, because we don't know all their situations, but there is value
Sure.
to those, such as yourself, Mike, that, despite promotions, despite success you've had in your life, at the core, you are Mike, right? You're very personable. You care about everyone around you. And it's really rare, right? I think that's really rare in most people, that there's not this pretentious or I'm better than you. It's just, hey,
Yeah.
I'm here, and, I may have different goals now, and I may have different things pushing on me career wise or family wise, but at the core, I'm still me.
Yeah. I tell my salespeople in the field every day of the week, you have one responsibility. Your job is to make that person whoever they want to work with you and only you. That's it. And the only way to do that is from a direct personal connection. That is the only way. There's no other secret. There's no trick. There's not. I've seen some of the flashiest sales guys with fancy brands, etc. I don't wear any of them, but or at least often. um, and, uh, nothing is sustainable except, Brad, when you make a choice, I want you to pick me. Period. And I'll do whatever it takes so that when you make a choice, that choice is mine. And I'd hope that I make those kinds of connections so that when the builder has a choice and the designer has a choice, they pick us.
Well, Mike, you started saying people buy from people, and you ended saying people buy from people. So I
I
don't think
love
you
it.
could. I don't think you could have closed that better. So for those listening, again, I can't thank you enough. I know how busy you are and been traveling. So thanks for making time and squeezing me in. But and our audience here. But for those listening, where can they find you and be in touch?
So my Instagram handle is Michael289. I'm also, of course, at Emzer.com is our website. Emzer Tile is our Instagram handle. I am typically on the road, but we've got 78 locations across the country and 4 distribution centers. So all you have to do is put it into your GPS and you'll find us.
That's amazing. Well, Mike, until next time, I know I'll see you again here soon and throughout the year. So thank you for making time today.
I can't wait. I appreciate the time, Brad. We'll see you later. Bye, everyone.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.